G'day, I'm Dan. One of the questions that I'm asked more than almost any other question is how to set up a spreadsheet or how to set up a worksheet to calculate whether a property is going to make money or not. Now, this is something that you could use all sorts of software for, but for today's exercise, I'm specifically taking you through a back of an envelope calculation so we can work out whether a property that we pick from the internet is going to be a great investment or a dud. Alright, so what I'll do is I'm going to sit down at my kitchen table and I'm going to grab some paper and I'm going to invite you to look over my shoulder as I go through all the numbers and the primary calculation that I do when I'm working out whether a property is going to make money. Okay, so what I've got with me is some paper and a pen, a calculator and my laptop, and the only thing I'm going to use my laptop for is to go online and to find a property. Now what I'm going to do is I've gone to domain.com.au, which is one of the leading Australian internet searches for property. I'm going to search in a regional place called Morwell, and the reason I'm searching there is because I know there are some relatively cheap, some very affordable places in Morwell. So we're going to have a look at the first property that pops up. I have no idea what's going to come up. The first property that pops up, and we're going to do a quick analysis on that property. So here we go. I've pressed enter and the first one that comes up is, well, I don't know. It doesn't have a price on there. So we'll move down. We've now got a property here that is $190,000, negotiable, a modern 3-bedroom place. So let's have a look at that. I'll start writing down some figures here and we'll see what I can get. Okay, so I'm going to get a couple of details down about this property. The first one, of course, is the most important. Price, and they're asking for $190,000. Now remember, they might be taking a lower offer, and online it does say that it's negotiable. So what I might do is say, you know what, I'm going to consider an offer of $180,000, and we'll just see how we go. Now, the next thing I need to keep in mind is that whenever you buy a property, you need to pay for certain taxes, certain duties and that type of thing. So we're going to have some extra costs on here, and they'll be about 5%. So I'll grab the calculator and we'll work out how much 5% of that is, and that's about $9,000. So my total price, if I was to buy this, would be about $189,000. Okay, now on the other side, I want to start having a look at the rent. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back to Domain and I'm going to have a look for the rent for a property that's very similar. And I've done that, and I find out the rent for a similar property is about $250 per week. Okay, and if I multiply that by 52, 250 times 52, that equals $13,000 per annum, or for every year. So this is something else that I need to keep in mind as well. Now, I'll be putting down a deposit on this. I can't buy a property without a deposit, and generally you'd need a 20% deposit. So we'll consider 20% of $180,000 for your deposit is going to be about $36,000. And once we've paid all our purchasing and everything, we're looking then at a loan of about 189 minus 36, and if we can get that, we're looking at $153,000. Now at the moment, interest rates, that's the next thing we need to worry about, are at about 7.5%. But we don't know if they're going to go up or not. So let's start being a bit conservative here. Let's say interest is at 8.5%. I'm adding on 1% just to be safe. And I want to work out what my annual interest might be. So I'll multiply 8.5% by the loan value. And I get approximately $13,000, would you believe, and $5 per annum. Now, this looks really great because our our expenses and our income are extremely similar, and would you believe that is absolutely a coincidence? But we haven't considered everything. We've got two other issues. One is our costs. And in our costs are things like insurance, management, maintenance and repairs, and all of that type of thing. And that can end up being up to 30% of the rent. And that's going to go. So 30% of the rent, that could cost almost $4,000 for the year. Now, we're not sure if it will cost that, but we want to be safe. So let's be sure about that. The other thing, though, that might be great is depreciation. And there's a chance we'll get depreciation back. And while I'm not going to go through depreciation on this back-of-the-envelope calculation, it's worth keeping in mind that depreciation can make the difference between a property being fantastic or not. And for that, we can go to an internet calculator. And that might give you some stuff. Okay, so now we've had a look at all the figures that I wanted to really have a look at. What I'm going to do is write just a really quick summary. Our costs. And there are two sorts. There's interest and there's the other costs that I spoke to you about. Now, the interest is $13,005 per annum, and the other costs we calculated as being about $3,900. So that means altogether we're looking at maybe $16,905 per annum. Our income, which is from rent, we calculated at being $13,000. And if we subtract one from the other, we see we make an annual loss of $3,905. Now remember, this is a pretty conservative sort of a calculation, and there's a good chance the number will be less than that. A way we could maybe get a better feel for what this means is we have a look at our weekly loss. So 3,905 divided by 52 weeks is $75.10 per week. And that would be our loss. Now remember, we've been very conservative, so we need to keep that in mind. And we also have depreciation that we haven't considered here. So that might make up for a considerable amount of that shortfall. We need to make sure, if we're looking at this seriously, that we go online to our calculators for depreciation and that we start crunching our numbers a little bit more seriously. But for a beginner, having a quick look at a property, that's the sort of back-of-the-envelope calculation that I'd do. Okay, so now you've seen a really basic calculation on any property, and you can do it on any property, to work out and get a first feeling whether this sort of property is going to be something you want to invest in or whether it's something you're going to want to move on from.